What's good? Welcome in to NFL Daily by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. Happy to have you with us. On today's show, we are breaking down Pro Football Focus's recent list of early season trade candidates and potential landing spots. And we'll break down all 9 of them one by one. But let's go ahead and begin with the list, just who they are and where Pro Football Focus has as a good landing spot for them. The first 5 names, a lot of position players, in particular at the wide receiver spot. Darius Slayton, his name's been thrown a lot. The list by Pro Football Focus has him going to Indy. What about Kendrick Bourne, the wide receiver from New England, headed to Chicago? Denzel Mims, another name that's been talked about a whole lot of the Jets moving on from him. What about pairing him with Baker Mayfield in Carolina? And then there's Terrace Marshall, the wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers. What about sending him to Green Bay? The Browns potentially need some running game help. What about D'Ernest Johnson going to the Los Angeles Rams? Then we move on to a few more players here. Myles Gaskin, another name that's been talked about a whole lot from the Miami Dolphins. It looks like they've moved on from him already. What about sending him to New Orleans? Or offensive tackle Reiff in Chicago, sending him to the LA Chargers? We know that Justin Herbert could use some O-line help right now. Then there's Sidney Jones with the Seattle Seahawks. And it looks like the Seahawks are already building for their future at the secondary spots, in particular at corner. Could be time to move on from him, send him within the division to the Arizona Cardinals. And then there's Tarell Basham, the edge rusher from the Dallas Cowboys, possibly sending him to the Tennessee Titans. We'll discuss all of those, break them down one by one in just a minute. Before we do, though, your chance to be the GM, whether it's one of those guys that we mentioned or somebody else, name a player that your team should trade for. Who's on your radar that you would like to see brought in from your favorite team to get them over the hump? Let us know in the comments section below. Let's begin with Darius Slayton and the idea of sending him to the Indianapolis Colts. The money on Slayton, by the way, not very costly at this point. Just a one-year contract that pays him $536,000, and he agreed to a revised contract that converted almost 2/3 of his base salary in incentives. And the star wide receiver for the Colts, Michael Pittman, is a lock for 10-plus targets about every time he suits up. But Matt Ryan could use another weapon. Put Darius Slayton out there. I think this is a win-win because the Giants are clearly done with Darius Slayton. And the Colts, if they're going to make any type of push to win the AFC South and compete in the playoffs, Matt Ryan, Matty Ice need some help. Darius Slayton, I think this could be a win-win for both sides. How about Kendrick Bourne from New England? Look, this New England team, you're going to be without Mac Jones, it looks like, for a while. And we all thought that they were going to kind of take a step back this year anyway. Might as well start building up that draft capital for next year as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying the season's officially over for New England, but it doesn't look good. I can tell you that much right now. Chicago, Justin Fields, if you've been watching that offense at all this year, they got a lot of problems. Justin Fields needs some help. Kendrick Bourne could potentially be that guy. And remember, Bourne was effectively benched in week 1, and he's had to push to kind of get into the lineup. Meanwhile, in Chicago, free agent addition Byron Pringle was just added to the injured reserve list, so they need some help there. Bourne could be their option there. What about Denzel Mims? Now, Denzel Mims, remember, he was a highly talented player coming out, but really just has not come to form. And what would be interesting if you paired him up with Baker Mayfield in Carolina, it would be almost like the island of misfit toys of sorts there with that team, because you had Baker, who wasn't good enough for the Cleveland Browns, and then you potentially bring in Mims, who hasn't worked out for the New York Jets, and you try to pair them together and make it work. And look, we know that Matt Rule is on a very warm seat right now, probably a pretty fire and hot seat at this point. And if you're that management group, besides just Matt Rule, but those in the front office, you're trying to do everything you can to salvage your jobs and compete at this point, do anything possible. And so maybe making a move, bringing in Denzel Mims, could make sense, quite frankly. The Jets, look, They have made it known. They are not happy with Denzel Mims. It hasn't worked. Any draft capital you could get, that could make sense there. Speaking of Carolina, by the way, another idea that is brought up of the Carolina Panthers moving on from Terrace Marshall and sending him to Green Bay for a 2024 fifth-round pick. Now, Marshall in his contract situation still has 3 years to go, but only owed $2.98 million. He was just a second-round draft pick last season, but his NFL career really hasn't got him going anywhere at this point in time. And for me, this is one of those deals where if you're Green Bay and trying to find Aaron Rodgers another weapon, that makes a lot of sense. I think Green Bay would win this trade. If I'm Carolina, I wouldn't give up on Marshall yet, especially a situation where you have to wait till 2024 to get a fifth-round pick. I wouldn't make this deal, but if I'm Green Bay, I love this deal, quite frankly, because Aaron Rodgers gets help. It doesn't cost you too much. It's a low-risk, potential high-reward situation. I would like this more for Green Bay than I would for Carolina. What say you? Who's the best wide receiver on the market? We named about 4 guys there. Who are you looking at? Who would you like to see potentially traded to your favorite team? Name a wide receiver on that trade market, whether it's somebody we mentioned or somebody we did not mention that you think could get traded and could be a good fit somewhere. Who's the best wide receiver out there? Let us know. Today's show is presented by BetUS, the exclusive sportsbook partner of Chat Sports. And if you go to chatsports.com/bet, you can use the promo code NFL Daily for a 125% deposit bonus. You put $100 down, you get $125 to spend for free when you use the promo code NFL Daily at checkout. Quite the deal now. You can bet on this weekend's NFL action, college football, prop bets, and more. It's all in one place. Chatsports.com/bet, promo code NFL Daily. A few more names for you. Let's move to the running back position now. D'Ernest Johnson, potentially going from the Cleveland Browns to the LA Rams. 1 year remaining on his deal, $591,666 he is owed at this point. And when you look at the Rams running back situation, they're not getting a lot of quality production right now out of Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson at this point. And so we've seen the Rams. Look at last year when they won the Super Bowl. They've been aggressive with some of these midseason moves before. Last year bringing in Odell Beckham. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they made a move like this. But I would say this much too. Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson, those guys, I think they will get going sooner than later, quite frankly. Look, I could see why you might not be pleased and want to make a move, make a trade if you're the Rams. But I think that these guys eventually get going. If I'm the Rams, I'm not in panic mode yet. I'm not making this trade right now. I understand why you would be tempted to do so, but I wouldn't make that move yet if I'm the Rams. If I'm Cleveland, and you know what you have already with one of the best backfields in football, Johnson essentially is disposable here. If you can get a 6th-round pick out of it, I like this trade more for Cleveland than I do for the Rams necessarily. How about Myles Gaskin headed to New Orleans potentially? Look, it is no secret at all. The Miami Dolphins and their situation with Myles Gaskin, things are just not on the same page, okay? And they're looking for anything at this point. A 7th-round pick, just something to get him out of Miami at this point in time. He's owed 1 year, $1.4 million at this point. Not going to cost a whole lot. New Orleans, with their running game, they need somebody to be a check-down receiver for Jameis Winston, somebody out of the backfield that can catch. Myles Gaskin could potentially be that guy. To me, that sounds like a win-win for both sides involved here. We're talking about the NFL every day here on NFL Daily. Also the NBA, college football, and more. For all the latest news, rumors, live shows, and more, our Red Zone show each and every Sunday. It's right here on Chat Sports, NFL Daily. Hit that red sub button so you never miss a moment. YouTube.com/ChatSportsTV. Couple more names for you here. Let's head to Los Angeles now, where Riley Reiff could be headed, leaving the Cincinnati Bengals for a 2024 6th-round pick, sending that and Reiff to the LA Chargers for a 2024 5th-round pick. Now, what's interesting in this case for the Chargers, look, Justin Herbert is banged up. Those ribs aren't looking good, and I'm not going to get into the pain shots, but that's a whole nother thing, right? And then you look at Rashawn Slater is out for the year, and you need something. To me, this is one of those deals where I think the Chargers need this trade more than I think the Bengals do, quite frankly. To me, I like this trade more for the Chargers than I do the Bengals. The Chargers, if they're going to do something, if they're going to make a run this year, they can't stay pat. They can't stay content. Got to make a move like this right here. LA, this one makes perfect sense. Now, trades within the division are not very common in the NFL, but this one could actually work out well for both sides. Look, the Seahawks are not playing Sidney Jones. He has one tackle on the year. That's it at this point, okay? And Arizona is desperate in their secondary. That secondary has not looked good. This is not a franchise quarterback we're talking about here. This is not going to be the motivational thing in the locker room of they disrespected me, they traded me, and caused a ruckus here, okay? You can make this trade and not have all-out civil war between division rivals here. It's okay if this trade happens. If you send Sidney Jones, if the Cardinals fill a need at corner, a temporary need necessarily, Sidney Jones is just on a one-year contract for $1.3 million. And then Seattle, who's continuing to build for their future, if they can get draft capital, I'll say this much too, though. If I'm Seattle, I would push towards a 2023 pick, though. Not have to wait till next year. If you can get a 2023 pick when you know that next year you're going to load up again in the draft and try to push forward for next year, that's what I would push towards. That's what I would change. I would try to get that for 2023 if I'm Seattle, quite frankly. What's the team that needs to make a trade? I mentioned the Chargers. That's the one that comes to mind in particular with helping that offensive line out. What say you? Let me know in the comments section. Name a team that needs to make a trade. Last one here. Terrell Basham from the Dallas Cowboys, edge rusher to Tennessee for a 2024 sixth-round pick. 1 year left, $972,000 he's owed. Tennessee lost Harold Landry III to a torn ACL before the season began. They need some help. This is one that I think makes sense for both sides here, where Dallas gets something, Tennessee fills a need. Tennessee still trying to compete in the AFC South, a very winnable division, but they need to make some changes because right now they're not good enough. They're off to a slow start this year. So there you have it. That's a look at those trade options. As always, you can follow me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at Tyler Jones Live. Follow Chat Sports as well, at Chat Sports, and we'll see you next time here on NFL Daily. Have a great day.